So the zeros of a function is when f of x, zeros of a function, f of x, are the x values for which f of x equals 0. So you're basically solving an equation x equals 0. Got it? So in equation form, that is what this is. Any questions about how it looks as an equation? Okay? The synonyms for zeros are solutions, roots, and x-intercepts. Those are your synonyms. That means if a problem asks you for any of these 4 words, it means you're going to do the same thing. You're going to solve for 0, equal to 0. Okay? So the other ways that it can look like, so this is it as an equation. So this is as a coordinate. You're going to have a value for x, but your y is going to always be 0. On a table, you're going to have a value for x, and your y is going to be a 0. On a graph, you're going to look and see where does it cross the x-axis at, and that will be your 0, your x-intercept, your solution, your root. Question, comments, or concerns about box Uno? Okay. All right, so we're going to move into box 2. I don't care which is your box 2. You want to go left, right, diagonal, whatever makes you happy. You're going to move into box 2 on your notes. Okay? Box 2, we're going to talk about how to find a 0 from a quadratic. So we have quadratic example.
Is our meeting today for just the general numbers?
Okay. So a quadratic means that you have ax squared plus bx plus c, right? We talked about that yesterday. Mm-hmm. Remember? Okay, so for us, we're going to do f of x equals 3x squared plus x minus 10. This is the quadratic we're going to use for our examples. And I know it's a quadratic because it's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Because of that, I use what to solve it?
The formula.
The formula. So, my quadratic formula is
Opposite b.
x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey,
that's the song you was talking about?
That's the song I learned to. I learned it to row, row your boat. Every other teacher teaches it differently. My 8th grade teacher taught us row, row your boat. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey! And she actually made us stand up and row our boats and sing it for a grade.
Are we gonna do that?
It may. If we need the grade, who knows? You may be up here rowing and singing.
I mean, I can't sing, but
I can't either. You just heard me. All right, so let's identify our variables. So what's my A? What would be my A variable? 3. A equals
3.
What would be my B?
1.
And what would be my C?
10.
All right, so I want you in your groups at your table to get as far as you can in the next 2 minutes. So in your groups at your table, get as far as you can in the next 2 minutes. So as I write it out, if you got stuck on a part, you need to tell us, okay? So first thing you should have did was substitute in all your values, right?
Yeah.
So we have x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 10 all over 2 times 3.
I got that.
How did we do on step 1?
Great.
Substitution, we're good?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Just like before, with PEMDAS, you do what it says, right? PEMDAS says parentheses, exponents, then we multiply from left to right. Agreed? So, going to start my next part. My simplifying. 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 3 is
Negative 12.
and negative 12 times negative 10 is plus 120.
Yep.
2 times 3 is? All right, how did we feel about that step? Cleaning up underneath our radical. Good?
120 because negative 20 is how to help you, bro.
Were you asking me? Oh. Alright, so keep going under my radical. Underneath the radical, what's 1 plus 120? So I have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 121 over 6. What is the square root of 121?
11.
11. So I have negative 1 plus or minus 11 over 6. What does that plus or minus mean? There's two solutions, right?
Yes.
So one solution, I have to do what?
Subtract.
One solution means I'm going to add, and then the other solution means I'm going to subtract. So I have to do both solutions. So negative 1. So we have negative 1 plus 11 over 6. And what does that give me?
5 over 3.
Gives me 5 over 3. 10 over 6, which reduces to 5 over 3. So one solution is 5 over 3. How do we feel? Okay.
A little hot, but
No, it's hot. I'm sorry.
Oh,
you're gonna be here tomorrow morning?
I just didn't like.
Huh?
You gonna be here tomorrow morning?
I will. I have a student council meeting.
No.
What about first
I
grade?
went ahead and
I have a class.
added 20
You can come in the pre-cal class in
plus
first grade.
1 and did the square root.
Okay? So then I'm going to do the minus. Negative 1 minus 11 over 6. What's negative 1 minus 11?
Negative 12.
Negative 12. And negative 12 divided by 6 is? Negative 2. So my two solutions are 5/3 and negative 2. How do we do?
I did pretty good.
Yes, no, maybe so?
Yeah.
Okay? Go. Needs to be away.
feel like I just
Not on your desk, not on your lap. Away.
Getting closer and closer every day.
Okay?
in school.
Alright, so we're going to use our calculator to verify. So a big thing in our class, guys, our calculator is not our means of getting our solution. Our calculator is to check our solution. Does that make sense? So we're going to check ourselves using the calculator. So you should have your calculator from working on your scavenger hunt. My little box has just gone everywhere. So I'm going to open my calculator. I'm going to start a new document. And I'm going to add the graph. So I'm going to actually go ahead and graph 3x squared plus x minus 10. And there is my graph. Okay? Sometimes it is easy to easy to count and see if I did it right. So which one of my x's can I easily count to?
2, negative 2.
I can easily count to negative 2, right? Because it's right there. Boom, boom. Okay? Now, I know that my other answer was a fraction, right? What is 5/3 as a decimal? What is 5/3 as a decimal?
1.6.
So,
And I use 6s and then like a 7. Yeah, 1.6 going on forever.
This little one, dog.
Just get another calculator.
all right.
1.6 going on forever.
So, if I did it right, and when you're in a graph page, if you just click on the scratch pad, I call it the baby count, you can go back and forth between an extra graph and the calculator page. But if I type in 5/3 in the calculator and I put a decimal, it'll tell me what it is as a decimal value. And then when I hit escape, it takes me right back to my graph. Okay? All right. So, to verify, you go menu, 6, analyze graph, 1, 0. I go to the left, and it says that you should have gotten negative 2. Did we get negative 2? I go all the way to the right, and it says you should have gotten 1.67, which is 5/3. Did we get 5/3? Yes. So what does that tell us? What answer is right, and we are geniuses. Give yourself a high five. Do y'all realize a high five is just a clap?
Yeah.
Your self high five is a clap. All right. So I can write it as its equivalent. So depending on the problem, if it asks for just a solution, 5/3 and -2 work. If it asks for my coordinates, I would write -2, 0, and 5/3, 0. So depending on the problem, dictates how I write it. If it asks for x-intercepts, I write it as a coordinate. If it asks for solutions or x values, I write it in the blue. Questions about zeros and quadratics?
Nah.
We're good? All right, so we're going to go to our next box. Again, choose whichever box you want. You only have 2 left to decide, so shouldn't be a tough decision.
I can't see that.
See what? We did that a long time
No, I'm
ago.
talking about that.
The red?
Yeah.
Oh, you need glasses. All right, so our next type of function we're going to focus on is a radical. So in your next box, we're going to do a radical. What does radical mean?
Extreme.
What's that? What's a square root, right? A radical means that my function is under a root. Okay? So our radical that we're going to do is the square root. So g of x equals the square root of 10 minus x squared. So I'm going to write g of x equals the square root of 10 minus x squared. That's a sad looking radical. That didn't make it much better.
It didn't. Okay.
Okay? So with a radical, what you're going to do, there are 2 steps. Step 1, as you set it equal to 0. So you're going to set the whole thing equal to 0. That's step 1. And then step 2, you're going to do inverse operations.
So you subtract 10.
I will. But what does inverse operations mean as a whole?
So whatever you're doing to one side, whatever you're doing, you do the polar opposite.
Exactly. Whatever you're doing, you're going to do the opposite.
Cancel it out.
And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Because my whole goal is to get x by itself. So I have the square root of 10 minus x squared equals 0. What's the first barrier to me getting to x? The square root. How do I cancel out a square root?
You square it.
I squared. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So now we have 10 minus x squared equals 0. Is x by itself yet?
No.
Nope. What's my next barrier?
Minus 10.
The 10, right? So it's positive, so I'm going to subtract. What I do to one side, I do to the
Under.
and I get negative x squared equals negative 10. Okay? Is x by itself?
No.
No. If that negative is just there, what number is there? A 1. So even though it's not visible, it's actually, that looks like a plus sign. That still looks like a plus sign.
Put it closer to your x.
There we go. Squeezed it on in there. So how do I move a negative 1?
You multiply by 1.
I'm going to multiply or divide by what kind of 1?
Negative.
A negative 1. That's going to become a positive, and I'm left with x squared equals positive 10. My blind people?
Thank you.
Your square, you don't really change. Like
Oh,
x squared,
Here?
you change that.
Was that X?
Which part?
I need all that.
0 squared is 0. Yeah, so before I can touch the inside, I have to get rid of the square root. All right, blind people, can y'all see?
I need that.
I feel like I learned.
We need you to switch places with D'Angelo or something so you can be closer to the board. All right, I will go back up in a second. All right, so here we have it. Is x by itself yet?
No.
So the opposite of a square is what? Square root. What I do to one side, I gotta do to the
Other.
What happens when you take the square root of a number?
I feel like.
You divided by.
Don't you gotta find the perfect square?
10's not perfect, so. But what does it produce?
Oh, one of the where you gotta like break it down. And keep
Y'all making it way harder.
I don't know.
It just makes a positive and a negative answer.
Oh.
So not only is it positive square root of 10, it's also negative square root of 10. So my solution, this would be my solution, and my coordinates would be square root of 10, comma 0, and negative square root of 10, comma 0. So taking the square of something produces a positive and a negative answer. And 10 is not a perfect square, so can I take that? Can I break it down any more than that? No. It has no factors that are perfect squares in it, because it's just made with 2 and 5 and 110. This looks so big from back here.
Miss, I can't. Can you go up? I still need that damn casserole.
You can't see that? You really need to go take the eye
Debating if
exam.
I'm going to the gym again. Miss,
You probably won't be able to identify the E.
Miss,
Yes. Yeah. All right. How do I keep moving the box? I don't know. My little box just keep moving. All right. So what are your questions about radicals? Okay. So step 1 is to do what?
Set it to equal 0.
Set it equal to 0, and then step 2 is to do what?
Inverse operation.
Inverse operation. So if I'm adding, then I have to subtract. If I'm dividing, I have to. If I take the square root of it, I have to square. Do you understand inverse operation? Opposite. All right. So we're going to check on our calculator. So I would like for you guys to take a moment, graph it, and check it on the calculator. Put it away, because your page is pretty empty. You do not have the whole third box.
I got it.
All right. So I'm going to add a graph, and it's the square root. So control square.
It's too freaking hot.
I told you were going to get hot,
I want to take my jacket.
but now you have no choice because it's hot, right?
Yeah, I'm suffocating.
Okay? So just by looking at the graph, can you approximate what the square root of 10 should be?
Like
Just by looking at the graph,
3 something.
3 something, right? Because if I look at my x-intercepts, they actually are just a little bit past 3, correct? So if I wanted to check what the square root of 10 was, I would go to my little baby calc, and you see how I put it in there? So the square root of 10 is approximately 3.16. It's not 3.5 because it's not. Is it halfway in between 3 and 4? No, so 3.5 would be a little too much. But to double check the value, I press what? Then
1.
here's one answer, 3.16, negative, and then positive 3.16. Hey, nice you join us. All right, any questions so far? How do we feel? Doable? Horrible? Is that what we said? Oh, I feel like I heard doable. Debatable. All right, our last example is going to be a rational. So we've done quadratic, radical, and now our last box is rational.
I'm still on his tracks and everything. I just don't know where. The thing still works. It's just it wasn't going up.
All right, so rational. My example is 2. So we're going to do h of t equals 2t minus 3 over t plus 5. Okay, so if you remember, when we were finding our domain of a rational function, what area of the function did we focus on? The bottom, the denominator, right? So if we're looking for the zeros, which area do you think we're going to focus on? The top, because we've already used the bottom for something, right? So our focus is going to be on the numerator, because it's okay to have 0 in the numerator. Not in the denominator, in the numerator. So I'm going to, first step is to
Make it set equal to 0.
set numerator equal to 0. So I have 2t minus 3 equals 0.
Solve.
And then step 2 is to solve. Solve for variable. Which again means you're using inverse operation. So what is the first inverse operation needs to take place?
You're going to add 3 to both sides.
I'm going to add 3 to both sides. When I do one side, I do to the
Other.
and I have 2t equals 3. Okay, what's next?
You want to divide?
Hey, can you slow down a little bit?
Yes, I've only done one thing. Who had a question?
Sound like nobody can keep up.
Okay, so all we've done is add 3. If you feel like you've missed something, you haven't. You just added 3 to both sides, and 0 plus 3 is 3. So if you felt lost, I hope you're back on board. Now we're down to 2t equals 3.
Divide.
Is our variable by itself?
No.
So what do we need to do?
Divide.
We need to divide by 2. What I do to one side, I do to the.
Other.
So I now have t equals
3 over 2.
3 over 2. Does anyone know what 3 over 2 is as a decimal? 1.5. 1.5. 1. So this is my solution. And what would be my coordinate? Perfect. My coordinates would be 3/2, comma 0. So again, for rationals, we set the numerator, is the key word, right? Equal to 0. And then we solve for the variable. So however you have to solve for the variable is how you solve for it. And then we can use our calculator to double check ourselves. So I'm going to go to my handy dandy calculator. So I'm going to go add a new graph. No, you actually graph the whole thing. So I'm going to type in 2x minus 3. What was my denominator?
Over x plus 5.
X plus 5. Okay. Do we see where we cross the x-axis at? Does it look like we're halfway in between 1 and 2?
Yeah.
So that means we're pretty good. So let's just double check. Menu, 6, 1. Left, right. Were we right?
Yeah.
Yes. We're geniuses.
So why wouldn't we
Turn
put
it.
it on the
I have my teachers tell me that.
Why wouldn't we put it on the side?
You could, either way. You either can write it as a fraction or write it as a decimal.
I'm gonna get a white paper.
All right, thank you guys. Tomorrow will be a classwork day. So using your notes, you will be working these problems.
I'm not gonna be here tomorrow.